abandoned, bleeding, and left to die for birthing a girl. Mary Ellen Carter thought her life was over, but when a Cheyenne warrior claimed her as his own, her story of survival and revenge began. Dustwood, Wyoming Territory, 1877. A place where a man's worth was measured by the size of his cattle herd, a woman's worth by the number of sons she bore, and where mercy was as scarce as rain in July. Mary Ellen Carter had neither cattle nor sons. Instead, she had a baby girl, a red-faced, squalling thing wrapped in an old flour sack, and a body still aching from the long, brutal labor that had nearly taken her life. It should have been a moment of joy. But in Dustwood, a girl child was not a blessing. It was a disappointment. Her husband's kin stood around the cabin like a jury ready to pass sentence. Mrs. Carter Sr., a woman whose tongue could skin a man faster than a Bowie knife, looked down at the child with contempt. "A girl?" she spat, as though the word itself was sour. "You near died birthing a useless girl? You should have prayed harder." Mary Ellen, pale and weak, tried to smile through cracked lips. "She's strong. She's got your son's chin." But her husband, Thomas Carter, wouldn't meet her eyes. He just shifted uncomfortably, scratching his beard. "Pop needed a boy," he muttered. "A son to carry the name. Can't pass the ranch to a daughter." Mary Ellen's chest ached worse than her torn flesh. She wanted to scream, to remind him that she'd nearly bled out bringing that child into the world, that she clung to life with sheer grit, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she clutched the baby tighter. The child's tiny fingers curled around hers, soft and fragile, yet fierce enough to hold on. Mrs. Carter Sr. sneered. "Mark my words, Tom. This woman's cursed. A girl firstborn means more girls to follow. You want your line ended? You want your pa's land wasted." And just like that, the verdict was passed. That night, while Mary Ellen dozed in exhaustion, Thomas Carter hitched the wagon and rode off, leaving his wife and newborn in the cabin alone. By dawn, Mrs. Carter Sr. returned with two of her sons, dragged Mary Ellen from her bed, and shoved her and the infant into the dirt. "You birthed a mistake," the old woman hissed. "Now live with it." Mary Ellen lay on the ground, clutching her daughter as the wagon wheels creaked away. She was too stunned to cry. The Wyoming sky stretched endless above her, blue and merciless. A cold wind bit through her torn dress. Blood still stained her thighs, her body trembling from weakness. The baby whimpered, rooting for milk she barely had. Mary Ellen pressed her lips to her daughter's head. "Don't you listen to them," she whispered. "You're not a mistake. You're mine." But even as she said it, her heart filled with dread. She had no family, no money, no home, just herself, her child, and a frying pan she'd snatched from the cabin before they shoved her out. She staggered into town days later, half-starved and bleeding, carrying her baby on one hip. Dustwood wasn't kind on the best of days, but now the whispers rose like buzzards circling a dying horse. There she is, the Carter woman. Got tossed out for birthing a girl. Lord have mercy, she's still alive? The men snickered, spitting tobacco in the dirt. The women shook their heads in pity, or was it scorn? Mary Ellen ignored them. She walked into the general store, asked for milk and bread. Old man Bixby, behind the counter, squinted. "You got coin?" She hesitated. "No." He slammed the loaf back on the shelf. "Then you got nothing." Her stomach twisted, but she managed a bitter smile. "Don't worry. My cooking could kill a man faster than a rattler anyhow. You'd best be glad I can't pay." Some folks laughed. Most didn't. She left with nothing but her child and her frying pan. By nightfall, she found herself at the edge of town, huddled by a dying fire. Her baby whimpered weakly, hungry. She tried to nurse, but her milk was thin. She prayed to God, but heaven stayed silent. And then, because Dust would never let humiliation rest, Sheriff Abel Harper strolled by. He was a stout man with a badge that gleamed brighter than his sense of justice. "Well, well," he drawled, "if it ain't the Carter girl. Or should I say the Carter reject?" Mary Ellen's fists clenched. "You do well to move along, Sheriff." He tipped his hat. "Don't worry. We ain't got laws against birthing girls. Yet." She nearly swung the frying pan at him, but the baby stirred, pulling her back from the edge. The sheriff chuckled, walking away. Careful now. Wolves circle the weak. He wasn't lying. That night, real wolves came sniffing. Mary Ellen heard their growls in the dark. She gripped a frying pan in one hand. Her baby clutched to her chest with the other. A pair of glowing eyes appeared in the firelight. She muttered through clenched teeth, "I swear, if you take one more step, I'll make stew out of you. And I warn you, no seasoning on earth can fix my stew." The wolf paused, tilted its head, and then slumped back into the shadows. Mary Ellen let out a shaky laugh. See? Even wolves got better sense than the Carters. But humor could only carry her so far. By morning, she was weak, dizzy, barely able to stand. Her lips were cracked, her dress torn, her baby's cries faint. She sank to her knees in the dust, whispering, "I'm sorry, little one. Mama ain't strong enough." Her vision blurred. She thought she saw shapes moving on the horizon. Riders. She blinked. Maybe it was a fever. Maybe it was death finally coming. But as the shapes drew closer, she realized it wasn't white men. They rode bareback, their hair long, their faces painted, their horses fast and sure. Cheyenne, her heart seized with terror. Dustwood was full of stories. Savages who scalped, who stole, who killed without mercy. She tried to crawl backward, clutching her child, but her body gave out. The riders slowed. One dismounted. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes dark as storm clouds. War paint streaked across his face. Mary Ellen raised a frying pan weakly. "Stay back, or I'll cook for you." The man stopped. Then, to her shock, he laughed. Not cruelly, not mockingly, just a deep, rolling laugh that felt warmer than the fire she'd lost. He looked at the child in her arms, reached out a hand, not to strike, but to touch the baby's cheek. "Strong," he said in halting English. "Strong as sunrise." Mary Ellen blinked at him. No one in Dustwood had ever called her daughter strong. And for the first time since the Carters cast her out, hope flickered in her chest. The Cheyenne warrior, the tall warrior who had dismounted, studied her quietly. He was younger than she first thought, perhaps mid-20s, but carried himself with the steady calm of a man who had weathered many storms. His black hair, braided with strips of leather, gleamed in the morning light. Mary Ellen gripped her frying pan tighter. She'd heard the tales. Indians took white women captive, made them live like slaves, or worse. But this man didn't look like the devil her neighbors whispered about. He crouched down, tilting his head. "Why you alone?" he asked, his English rough but clear. Mary Ellen's laugh was hollow. "Because my husband's got more spine in his beard than in his whole body. He left me, 'cause I gave him a girl instead of a boy." The warrior's eyes flickered with something. Disgust, maybe? He looked at the baby, then back at Mary Ellen. Girl is life. Without woman, no man. Fool husband. Mary Ellen nearly dropped the frying pan. "That's the first sensible thing I've heard since I came to this dust-choked excuse for a town." The warrior didn't smile. He simply nodded, then lifted his gaze toward the horizon, where storm clouds gathered. "Wind come," he said. "You follow or you die." Mary Ellen had no choice. Her body still ached from childbirth, but hunger gnawed deeper than pain. If she stayed by the dying fire, she and her baby would perish. The Cheyenne offered his horse. She blinked at him. "Can you trust me with your horse?" He shrugged. "Horse trust me. If you fall, horse bring you back." Mary Ellen couldn't help a snort. "Your horse is smarter than half the men I know." She climbed up awkwardly, clutching her baby close. The warrior swung onto another horse, signaling the others. With a sharp cry, the riders turned toward the open prairie. The wind bit hard as they rode. Dust stung her eyes. The baby whimpered, and Mary Ellen crooned nonsense, trying to mask her fear with humor. "Don't worry, sugar bean. If Mama falls off, this horse here'll fetch me up like a sack of potatoes." Which, truth be told, is about what I weigh now after starving 3 days. The warrior glanced back at her, frowning as though puzzled by her rambling. Mary Ellen muttered, "Don't you worry about me, mister. Talking to myself's how I keep from crying. By evening, they reached a hidden camp tucked in a valley where cottonwoods lined a creek. Smoke from fires rose in thin trails. Women worked hides. Children played with sticks and stones. Old men sat watching the horizon. When Mary Ellen slid off the horse, her knees nearly gave out. The baby wailed, hungry. The warrior barked something in Cheyenne, and one of the women brought a clay bowl. A rich, savory smell rose, buffalo stew. Mary Ellen's mouth watered so fiercely she nearly wept. But pride, that stubborn mule in her chest, reared up. These were strangers. Worse, savages, according to everyone in Dustwood. She couldn't just take their food. The warrior thrust the bowl toward her. Eat. She swallowed hard. I ain't in the habit of talking charity. His eyes narrowed. Charity? You know, handouts. Pity food. The warrior pointed at her baby. Girl need milk. You weak. You eat. Mary Ellen looked at her child's sunken cheeks, then at the stew. Pride crumbled fast as dry cornbread in soup. She snatched the bowl, muttering, Fine, but for the record, if the stew kills me, I'll haunt you till your dying day. The warrior only grunted. Not everyone welcomed her. That much was clear. Some of the women whispered, glancing her way. A few children pointed, giggling at her pale skin and ragged dress. One old man spat in the dirt and muttered a word she didn't understand, but the tone was clear enough. Mary Ellen's face burned. She was used to whispers in Dustwood, but somehow these stares cut deeper. Here she wasn't the car to reject. She was worse, an outsider, a trespasser. She leaned toward the warrior as he sat near the fire, sharpening a knife. What do they say about me? He didn't look up. They ask why I bring white women here. White men bring soldiers. Soldiers bring death. Mary Ellen's throat tightened. Well, you tell 'em I ain't no spy. Only thing I'm spying for is a clean bed and maybe a biscuit. This time, he did glance at her, just briefly, but there was the faintest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. That night, as the camp settled, Mary Ellen woke to the sound of howling. Wolves again. The hair on her neck prickled. She whispered to her baby, Oh, Lord, not again. I ain't got enough frying pan to go round. The warrior appeared at the entrance of the lodge where she lay. Sleep. Wolves, stay away. Mary Ellen blinked. How can you be sure? He tapped the blade at his belt. Because they know better. She stared at him, then laughed weakly. Well, maybe I'll sleep easy if you promise to whack and before they get me. Just don't whack me by mistake. The warrior tilted his head, clearly baffled by her humor, then turned and sat guard by the fire. Mary Ellen lay back, the baby nestled at her breast, and for the first time in weeks, she slept without fear gnawing her belly. Days passed. Mary Ellen grew stronger. She helped the women fetch water, even tried and failed to skin a rabbit. Her jokes made some of the children laugh, though the older folk still eyed her with suspicion. The warrior remained her silent protector. She learned his name, Cheyenne, falcon in his tongue. One evening, as a storm rolled over the plains, Cheyenne stood watching the darkening sky. Mary Ellen joined him, her baby strapped to her chest. The wind talks, he said suddenly. Mary Ellen squinted at him. Well, I've been accused of talking to the wind plenty, but it's never answered back. He looked at her seriously. Wind say you not safe. Danger come. Mary Ellen shivered, though the night was warm. She thought of Thomas Carter, of the Carters' family pride, of Dustwood, of how folks never let a scandal die. Danger from who? She whispered. Cheyenne's gaze never left the horizon. From your people. The return of the Carters. The prairie has a way of carrying news faster than a telegraph. Sometimes it's the wind that tells it. Sometimes it's a trader passing through. And sometimes it's the cackle of folks with nothing better to do than pass along another body's misfortune. So it was no surprise when word of Mary Ellen Carter's survival reached the very people who least wanted her alive, her husband's kin. It began in Dustwood at the general store. Old Mrs. Hattie Dobbs, who could sniff out scandal faster than a bloodhound sniffing bacon grease, leaned across the counter and whispered, You know that Carter girl? Mary Ellen? Folks say she's living with the Cheyenne. The storekeeper, Mr. Briggs, nearly dropped his sack of flour. With the Cheyenne? Thought she was wolf meat by now. No, sir, Hattie declared, puffing her chest. They say she's setting up camp right alongside him. Why? She's probably wearing buckskins and smoking one of them long pipes. By evening, the whole town was buzzing, and by the next morning, Thomas Carter's family had caught wind. Now, the Carters were Dustwood royalty, or so they thought. Old man Carter had built his fortune on cattle, and his pride was as wide as the prairie sky. When he heard Mary Ellen was alive, instead of thanking God, he slammed his fist on the dinner table so hard the plates rattled. Alive? Bah! She should have stayed gone. Shameful woman, bringing disgrace on this family. Mrs. Carter, a pinched woman with lips tighter than a church purse, sniffed. And with Indians, no less. What will folks say? Thomas, her spineless husband, shifted in his chair. Well, at least she's not dead, he offered weakly. His pa glared at him. Boy, you got no grit. That woman's made a fool of us all. First giving us a worthless girl child, then running off to shack up with savages. Mark my words, this ain't the last of it. She'll drag our name lower than a rattler's belly. Mrs. Carter dabbed her lips with her napkin. We ought to make sure she don't come back. Thomas swallowed hard, but said nothing. Mary Ellen, of course, knew none of this. She was too busy trying to convince Cheyenne that cornbread could be cooked in a skillet without turning to charcoal. See, the trick is... Oh, Lord, I think I burned again, she groaned, holding up a blackened lump. Cheyenne raised an eyebrow. Is food? Barely, Mary Ellen muttered. I swear, if cooking was a sin, I'd be bound for hell twice over. The children laughed at her attempts, and even some of the women began to soften. She was clumsy, but she had grit, and her humor broke through walls suspicion had built. Still, she often felt eyes on her, watchful, wary. She never quite forgot she was an outsider. And at night, Cheyenne's warning about danger from your people echoed in her head. One hot afternoon, as Mary Ellen washed clothes by the creek, a rider appeared on the ridge. He wasn't Cheyenne. His hat, his boots, the way he sat the saddle, everything screamed Dustwood. Mary Ellen's stomach dropped. The man raised his hand in greeting. Mary Ellen Carter? She clutched her baby tight. Who's the skin? Name's Sheriff Dunlap. I come with word from your family. Her laugh was bitter. Family? You mean the folks who turned their backs the minute I brought a girl into this world? The sheriff looked uneasy. Now, I don't know the whole of it. I just know the Carter sent me. They want you back in Dustwood. Mary Ellen narrowed her eyes. And if I don't feel like skipping back to their loving arms? Dunlap sighed. Then they'll come for you. That night, she told Cheyenne. They want me back, she said, pacing near the fire. Not because they care, but because they can't stand folks talking. They'd rather drag me home in shame than let me live free. Cheyenne's eyes were steady. What you want? Mary Ellen froze. No one had asked her that before. Not Thomas. Not her in-laws. Not even her own kin. I want, she swallowed hard. I want my girl to grow up where she ain't cursed with the crime of being born female. I want to laugh without someone saying it's unladylike. I want... Her voice cracked. I want to be seen. Cheyenne nodded slowly. Then you stay. But the next morning, hoofbeats thundered on the horizon. Dust rose in a dark cloud. The Carters were coming. Old man Carter rode at the front, face red with fury. Behind him came Thomas, pale and sweating, and half a dozen ranch hands with rifles slung across their saddles. Mary Ellen stood tall, baby on her hip, frying pan in her other hand. Pa Carter, she said coolly, to what do I owe the displeasure? You, he spat, will come home this instant. Enough shame has been dragged across our name. Mary Ellen barked a laugh. Your name? I nearly died out here, and all you can fret over is your precious reputation. Mrs. Carter sniffed. A woman's place is with her husband. Mary Ellen glanced at Thomas. He stared at his boots. Coward. Well, she said dryly, my husband ran faster than a scared coyote when things got tough. So pardon me if I don't leap for joy at the thought of crawling back. Old man Carter's hand twitched toward his rifle, but before he could speak, Chayton stepped forward. "She stays," he said, voice like stone. For a moment, the world held its breath. Carter's men shifted nervously. The Cheyenne warriors gathered silently behind Chayton, bows and rifles at the ready. Mary Ellen's heart pounded. She could almost hear the wind whispering, just as Chayton had warned. "Danger from your people." Old man Carter's eyes narrowed. "So it's true. You've thrown in with savages." Mary Ellen lifted her chin. "If savages mean folks who treat me and my baby with more kindness than my own kin, then yes, I have." Thomas finally found his voice. "Mary Ellen, please, just come home. Don't make this worse." She glared at him. "Worse? You left me to die, Thomas. You don't get to say what's worse." The silence stretched taut, like a rope ready to snap. Then, suddenly, a gunshot split the air. Blood, bullets, and betrayal. The sound of that first gunshot rang out across the valley, like a church bell on Judgment Day. It scattered crows from the trees, sent prairie dogs diving for cover, and froze every soul by the creek in place. Mary Ellen's first instinct was to clutch her baby tighter. Her second was to swing her frying pan up like a shield, though Lord help her if cast iron could stop a bullet. Then came the silence, a heavy, waiting silence that pressed down on every chest, daring someone to breathe wrong. It wasn't Chayton. It wasn't Carter's men. It wasn't even Mary Ellen, though she was timid to clock her father-in-law square in the jaw. It was Thomas. Yes, spineless, trembling Thomas, the man who couldn't fight a tumbleweed if it rolled across his boots. Somehow, in his nervous fumbling, his finger had found the trigger of his revolver. The bullet whistled harmlessly into the dirt by his own horse's hooves, making the poor beast buck in protest. "Good Lord, Thomas!" Old man Carter roared, ducking reflexively. "Are you trying to shoot us all in the foot?" Thomas went red as a beet. I didn't mean to." My hand slipped. Mary Ellen couldn't help it, even with her heart racing. She laughed. "Ain't that just like you, Thomas? First time you ever pulled the trigger on my behalf, and you didn't even aim at the right side of the fight." Even some of the Cheyenne chuckled under their breath, though their bows stayed raised, their eyes sharp. But accidents didn't matter. The damage was done. Guns cocked, arrows notched. One more wrong twitch, and blood would spill into that creek. Chayton's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Low, calm, dangerous. Put down your weapons, or none of you ride home." Old man Carter sneered. "You don't scare me, Indian." Mary Ellen stepped forward then, fury blazing in her eyes. "You best listen. Pa Carter, I've seen Chayton take down a buck at 200 yards with nothing but a bow. He don't miss. And if he says you won't ride home, you best believe your boots will be filling graves before sundown." Her boldness sent a ripple of unease through Carter's ranch hands. They weren't used to women talking like that, and certainly not women standing behind Cheyenne warriors. And that's when Thomas made his fatal mistake. "I can't let you stay here, Mary Ellen," he said, voice shaking. "Pa's right. You're my wife. You belong with me." Mary Ellen froze. "Belong with you? Thomas Carter, you left me to die." His jaw tightened, shame flickering across his face before pride smothered it. "I had no choice. Pa said—" "There it is," she snapped. Pa said, your whole sorry life's been one long echo of whatever that man spits out. You're no husband. You're a puppet." Thomas's hands trembled on the gun. He looked at her, then at the baby, his daughter. For a moment, Mary Ellen thought she saw softness in his eyes. Maybe regret, maybe even love. But then old man Carter barked, "Boy, do your duty." And Thomas raised a gun. It happened faster than lightning. Thomas's finger pulled. The crack split the air. Mary Ellen flinched, clutching her daughter. But the bullet never found her. Chayton had moved, so quick Mary Ellen barely saw it, knocking Thomas's arm aside. The shot went wide, whistling harmless into the trees. And before Thomas could fire again, Chayton's fist slammed into his jaw. The gun tumbled into the dirt. That was a spark. Carter's men roared. pulling rifles. The Cheyenne warriors let arrows fly. Horses screamed, men shouted, and the valley exploded in chaos. Mary Ellen ran for cover behind a fallen log. Clutching her baby, she pressed her lips to the child's forehead. "Shoo, baby girl. Mama's got you." Around her, bullets cracked like firecrackers on the 4th of July. Arrows hissed through the air. Dust and gun smoke choked the valley. She peeked out just long enough to see Cheyenne, bow in hand, loosing arrow after arrow with deadly precision. 2 of Carter's men fell before they even realized they'd been hit. Old man Carter bellowed, "Kill the redskin. Kill them all." Mary Ellen's blood boiled. "Redskin," she spat under her breath. "He's more man than you ever were." Then she saw Thomas crawling toward his drop gun. Time slowed. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She could run. She could hide. She could pray someone else stopped him. Or she could act. Her hand tightened around the cast-iron frying pan she still carried. Heavy, solid, dependable. Unlike Thomas. She rose, heart pounding, and stalked toward him. "Mary Ellen," he started, eyes wide. Clang. The frying pan came down hard across his skull. Thomas's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed in the dirt. Mary Ellen stood over him, chest heaving. "That's for leaving me, you sorry excuse for a man." But even as Thomas fell, betrayal came from another direction. One of Carter's ranch hands, Jed Hollis, a sneaky cow with a face like sour milk, crept around behind Cheyenne, his rifle leveled, his eyes cold. Mary Ellen's scream ripped through the battle. "Cheyenne, behind you." Cheyenne spun just as Jed fired. The bullet tore across his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Mary Ellen's heart stopped. "No!" she cried, rushing toward him. Jed smirked, raising his rifle again. "Savage lover dies next." Mary Ellen's hand shook. Her frying pan felt useless. But her eyes fell on Thomas's drop revolver. She scooped it up, aimed it the way Cheyenne had taught her, hand steady despite the tears streaking her face. "Not today," she hissed. Bang. Dropped like a sack of flour. Her shot rang louder than any other, because it wasn't just a bullet. It was a declaration. Mary Ellen Carter was done being a victim. With their best shooter down and their cowardly air knocked out cold, Carter's men faltered. The Cheyenne pressed forward, and within minutes, the battle was over. 2 ranch hands lay dead, 1 wounded. The rest, pale and shaking, fled with old man Carter shouting curses after them. "Mark me, girl," he bellowed as he rode off. "You'll pay for this. You'll rue the day you cross the Carters." His threats echoed off the hills, but his power shrank with every hoofbeat into the distance. The valley went quiet again, save for the groans of the wounded and the soft gurgle of the creek, now tinged red. Mary Ellen knelt beside Cheyenne, hands trembling as she pressed fabric to his bleeding shoulder. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered fiercely. "You hear me? Don't you dare." He managed a weak smile. "Strong shot," he murmured. She laughed through tears. "You ain't dying just so you can compliment my aim." The other women rushed to help, binding his wound, tending to the injured. And though Mary Ellen's arms ached from holding her baby and her soul ached from a fight, she felt something new blooming inside her. Strength, belonging, and a simmering resolve. The Carters had tried to drag her back in chains. Instead, they'd awaken a fire they'd never be able to put out. That night, as the camp settled under the stars, Mary Ellen sat by Cheyenne's side, her daughter asleep against her chest. She thought of Thomas, of old man Carter, of the hatred in their eyes. And though they were gone for now, she knew they wouldn't stay gone. Men like that didn't give up. They plotted. They waited. They struck when you least expected it. And when they did, Mary Ellen swore she'd be ready. Ashes, promises, and the prairie's whisper. The morning after the battle, the valley smelled of gunpowder, blood, and smoke. Ravens circled overhead, cawing greedily as though they'd been invited to the feast of death left behind. Mary Ellen woke stiff and sore by the fire, her baby nestled against her chest. For a heartbeat, she hoped it had been a bad dream, that maybe the gunfight, the screaming, Thomas raising a pistol at her, had all been some fevered nightmare. But then she saw the shallow grave by the creek, marked with simple stones. Carter men, covered by Cheyenne hands. No prayers from preachers. No eulogies. Just dirt and silence. And she saw Cheyenne. He lay propped against a log, his wounded shoulder bandaged with strips of buffalo hide. His face was pale, but his eyes, those steady hawk-like eyes, were open, watching her. "You're awake," she whispered. Relief flooded her like cool water on scorched skin. He gave her the ghost of a smile. Hard to sleep. Too much snoring from the women. Mary Ellen let out a shaky laugh. "Even shot and bleeding, you find humor. Better than weeping." His gaze softened. "But you were fierce yesterday. Fierce like a mother grizzly." She looked down at the revolver, still hanging heavy in her belt. The memory of pulling that trigger burned in her bones. "I ain't proud of it, Cheyenne." "You saved me," he said simply, "and your child. That is pride enough." The other women gathered slowly, their faces weary. Some had been widowed the night before. Others carried bruises from rough hands before the battle even began. But something had changed in them. No longer were they just shadows of broken ranch wives. They stood straighter, their voices sharper. A fire had caught in them, the same fire Mary Ellen felt in her gut. One woman, Ruthie, came over with a smile missing 2 teeth and said, "Mary Ellen, you cracked your husband's skull with that frying pan so hard, I swore angels clapped in heaven." Mary Ellen laughed until tears welled. "I reckon the angels were just shocked Thomas had a thought worth knocking out." Even the Cheyenne warriors chuckled, and laughter rippled through the camp. It was bitter, it was cracked, but it was laughter all the same. The first in months for many. By midday, they burned the Carter wagons left behind. Supplies, weapons, whiskey, all torched in a towering pyre. Flames licked the sky, and smoke twisted upward like a black serpent. "Why burn it?" Mary Ellen asked Cheyenne. "Because Carter will return," he said. "He always returns. Best he finds Ashton weapons." Mary Ellen stared at the fire. It reminded her of the life she left behind, the farmhouse she once scrubbed spotless, the husband she once thought would love her, the kin who cast her out for birthing a girl. All of it turned to ash now, and in the crackle of the fire, she heard the prairie whisper. Not words exactly, but a feeling, a call. She clutched her baby tighter. "She won't grow up knowing chains," she murmured. "Not Carter's, not no man's. She'll be free." That night, when the others slept, Mary Ellen sat beside Cheyenne. The firelight flickered across his sharp features. He looked tired but alive. "I've been thinking," she said softly. "All my life I let folks decide for me. Who I marry, where I live, even whether my baby girl was worth Savon. And yesterday, for the first time, I chose for myself." Cheyenne's eyes met hers. Steady, respectful, curious. "I chose to fight," she whispered. "And I chose you." Silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Then Cheyenne reached out, his hand covering hers. Rough, warm, grounding. "Then I choose you too, White Dove." Her heart stuttered. White Dove, that was the name he'd given her among his people, for the way she cradled her child with gentleness yet flew fierce when threatened. "I ain't much of a dove," she said with a tremble in her voice. "Fierce dove," he corrected. And in that moment, by the crackling fire, Mary Ellen made her promise. To her daughter, to herself, to the man beside her. "I'll never run again," she swore. "Not from Pa Carter. Not from no one. Whatever comes, I'll stand and fight." But the prairie had its own voice that night. The wind howled mournfully across the grass, rattling the cottonwoods. Coyotes yipped in the distance, and Mary Ellen felt it deep in her bones. A storm was coming, not of rain, not of thunder, but of men, of vengeance, a betrayal yet to bloom. For somewhere out there, old man Carter licked his wounds, and he wasn't the kind to forget. Before dawn, a scout returned with grim news. Smoke on the horizon, Carter men gathering. Mary Ellen stood tall, baby on her hip, revolver strapped to her side. She felt fear, but under it, a steel that hadn't been there before. "They'll come," she said. "They'll come hungry for blood." Chayton nodded. Then we will be ready. Mary Ellen looked toward the dark horizon. She thought of Thomas, of old man Carter, of all the years she'd swallowed tears and bit her tongue. Her lips curled into a hard, humorless smile. Let him come. I've got a frying pan with Pa Carter's name on it. The women around her laughed, fierce and sharp. And for the first time, Mary Ellen felt like she wasn't alone. Not a cast-off wife, not a broken daughter, but a warrior among warriors. The prairie whispered again. Blood, betrayal, fire. And Mary Ellen listened. The return of the Carters. A house divided. The prairie had gone quiet. Too quiet. Even the coyotes kept their distance. On the horizon, black smoke smudged the sky like the finger of God warning sinners. Scouts said the Carters were gathering again, what was left of them after Mary Ellen and Chayton stand. But a Carter never stayed down long. Like rattlesnakes, they just coiled tighter before they struck again. And this time, old man Carter wasn't just bringing kin. Word spread he was hiring guns. Mercenaries from Texas, drifters from Kansas, men too mean for prison and too crooked for honest work. Mary Ellen felt it in her bones. The storm was riding in fast. Deep in the cottonwoods by the river, old man Carter sat in his chair like a king on a throne of rot. His beard was stained with tobacco, his one good eye gleamed with venom, and his crippled legs stretched stiffly on a stool. Before him, a circle of men argued like buzzards over scraps. We lost near a dozen kin already, growled Cousin Virgil. Spitting in the dirt. Ain't worth spilling more blood. That half-breed and his squaw done whipped us once. Best we cut our losses. Cut our losses? Old man Carter's voice was a growl, low and dangerous. You sound like a woman, Virgil. You forget who we are? We're Carters. Ain't no half-breed or woman gonna shame this family and live. Another voice piped up, Jedediah Carter, thin and nervous as a field mouse. But Pa, the men spooked. They say that Apache fella fights like a spirit. And Mary Ellen, well, she done shot Thomas herself. Ain't natural. A wife to nin a gun on her husband. At that, old man Carter slammed his cane into the dirt. The men jumped. Thomas was weak, the old man spat. Weak like his mother. And weakness is what got him killed. Mary Ellen, his lip curled. Mary Ellen was always trouble. I told her ma the day she birthed her that she had the eyes of a cursed woman. And now look, she's turned against her own blood. Silence settled over the camp, thick as tar. The men shifted uneasily, but not every Carter agreed. Virgil leaned forward, voice low but sharp. Pa, maybe it's time you face the truth. Maybe the girl's stronger than Thomas ever was. Maybe she's more Carter than the rest of us. The old man's good eye blazed. You dare say that in my camp? Virgil didn't flinch. All I'm saying is, you're old, crippled. You can't even ride without pissing yourself. Maybe it's time someone else leads. The camp froze. Men looked from Virgil to old man Carter, waiting. Tension hummed like a coiled snake. Old man Carter leaned heavy on his cane, his voice cold as the grave. Virgil, you ever wonder how many men I killed before you were old enough to piss standing up? Virgil smirked. Not near enough, it seems. The two locked eyes, hatred simmering. And just like that, the Carters weren't one family anymore. They were splintered, some loyal to the old man, others quietly drawn to Virgil's ruthless ambition. Back at the Cheyenne camp, Mary Ellen practiced with her revolver every day. Her hands blistered, her aim wavered, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. She set bottles on fence posts, took a breath, and fired. Crack. Another bottle shattered. Better, Chayton said, stepping up behind her. His wounded shoulder was healing, though he still favored it. But don't pull the trigger with fear. Pull it with purpose. Fear makes you shaky. Purpose makes you deadly. Mary Ellen narrowed her eyes, lined up another shot, and fired. The bottle exploded into glass dust. Her lips curved. Purpose enough for you? Chayton gave her a rare grin. Plenty. Baby Rose cooed nearby in a cradle made of willow branches. Mary Ellen glanced at her daughter, a rush of fierce love surging in her chest. She won't grow up knowing fear. Mary Ellen vowed. Not like I did. She'll know strength. And laughter, Cheyenne added. Mary Ellen chuckled. Lord knows she'll get that, long as I've got a skillet handy. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, a rider stumbled into camp, bloody, beaten, half dead. It was Widow Agnes, a tough old woman who'd once kept a boarding house in town. The women rushed to her, but she waved them off with a cracked laugh. Save your pity. Takes more than a Carter boot to kill me. Mary Ellen knelt beside her. What happened, Agnes? The widow spat blood into the dirt. Carter's gathering again. Bigger this time. And worse. They got men fighting each other, tinning on each other like dogs. That Virgil's stirring the pot. Says old man Carter's gone soft. Says he'll gut him and wear his boots before winter. Chayton frowned. A divided enemy is dangerous. Makes them desperate. Mary Ellen's got twisted. And desperate men do stupid things. Agnes grabbed her wrist, eyes blazing. You listen to me, girl. Carter ain't just coming for revenge. He's coming for legacy. He wants your baby. Says a girl born under shame belongs to him, not you. Mary Ellen's blood ran cold. She pulled Rose close to her chest, heart hammering. He'll never touch her, she swore. Agnes wheezed a laugh. Then you best be ready. 'Cause Carter don't take no for an answer. Meanwhile, in the Carter camp, the cracks widened. Virgil whispered promises to the younger men, shares of land, women, whiskey. Old man Carter roared louder, swearing he'd hang his own kin if they dared betray him. It was only a matter of time before the Carters turned their guns on each other. And Mary Ellen? She planned to be there when they did. That night, Mary Ellen sat by the fire, rocking Rose. The flames danced in her eyes, painting her face with shadows. She thought of Thomas, of the day he first looked at her with love. Then the years that love soured into resentment. She thought of her kin who cast her aside. She thought of old man Carter's threats, Virgil's ambition, Chayton's steady hand. She whispered to her baby, You'll never know the chains I wore. Not while I'm breathing. Her voice hardened. If the Carters want blood, they'll get it. But they'll choke on mine before I let 'em take you. The prairie wind carried her vow into the night. Far off in the Carter camp, steel whispered in the dark. Virgil sharpened his knife by the firelight, eyes gleaming. Across the circle, old man Carter watched him with his one good eye, gripped tight on his cane. The family that once ruled the valley as one was now two wolves circling each other, both hungry, both snarling. And Mary Ellen, wounded wife, cast-off daughter, fierce mother, was a storm waiting to strike when they tore each other apart. Blood on the cottonwoods, the Carter Civil War. The night smelled of gun oil and blood. Somewhere out in the cottonwoods, a whip-poor wolf cried, but its song was drowned by the low murmur of men sharpening knives and muttering curses. The Carter camp was no longer a family. It was a powder keg, sparks dancing close. Virgil Carter had never been the favored son. He wasn't strong like Thomas had been or cruel like old man Carter, but he had something his kin overlooked. Cunning. That night, under a sliver of moon, he gathered a knot of younger Carters and hired drifters around a smoky fire. Y'all seen it, Virgil hissed, his knife point tracing idle circles in the dirt. The old man's cracked. He's sitting on a rotten stump counting himself king, but all he's doing is feeding us in the ground like pigs. Mary Ellen made fools of us, and what's he done? Nothing but spit and holler. One of the boys spat. Ain't right letting a woman make us look weak. Virgil grinned, teeth yellow in the firelight. Exactly. But weakness don't come from a woman. It comes from a leader too blind to see his time's done. You ride with me. You'll have land, whiskey, women. Ride with him. You'll have a grave. The men muttered, exchanged looks. Slowly, nods spread around the circle. Virgil leaned back, satisfied. Tomorrow we cut out the rot. Tomorrow the old man falls. Across camp, old man Carter sat hunched on a stool, cane across his knees, good eye gleaming in the firelight. He could feel it, smell it. Betrayal hung in the air like the stink of carrion. He barked at Jedediah, his youngest son. Fetch me my pistol and my whiskey. Jed hesitated. Pa, maybe you ought to rest. Old man Carter's cane lashed out, cracking Jed's shin. The boy yelped. Rest? While jackals circle my fire. You think I don't know what Virgil's doing? I made this family. I raised it up from dirt and blood. And I'll be damned before I let some snot-nosed pup piss on my name. He took the pistol in his hand, running a thumb across the worn handle. It had killed more men than Jed could count. Tomorrow, the old man muttered. Tomorrow, I remind him all who the Carters belonged to. At dawn, word reached Mary Ellen. A ranch hand, one of the few decent souls left in Carter service, rode hard to the Cheyenne camp, pale as death. They're fixin' to kill each other, he panted. Virgil's got near half the boys ready to turn guns on the old man. And the old man, he's cleaning his pistol, swearing he'll ham all at sunrise. Mary Ellen felt her blood run cold. If the Carters tore each other apart, good riddance. But in chaos, innocent folks bled, and worse. She knew old man Carter would burn the valley before he let go. She glanced at Rose, swaddled on her hip, then at Chayton. His eyes were steady, dark as storm clouds. You know what this means, he said quietly. Mary Ellen nodded. It means blood's coming, and plenty of it. The sun rose, burning red on the horizon like a wound. In the Carter camp, the men gathered in a wide circle beneath the cottonwoods. Their faces were drawn, eyes shadowed, hands twitching toward guns. Old man Carter limped into the circle, cane striking dirt. His pistol gleamed in his other hand. You think I don't see it? He roared, spittle flying. You think I don't hear the whispers? Virgil's poisoning your ears. But I'll tell you plain. You turn on me, you ain't Carters. You're carrion, and carrion I bury deep. Virgil stepped forward, tall and calm, hands open but eyes blazing. Old man, he said, voice carrying. You talk a burying, but it's you belong in the ground. You're a relic. You're a cripple propped up on hate. You can't even ride, can't fight, can't lead. Time we had a Carter with teeth again. Murmurs rippled. Some men nodded. Others shifted uneasily. Old man Carter sneered. And you think you got teeth, boy? All I see is a vulture waiting for scraps. Virgil's hand hovered near his revolver. Then maybe it's time I proved it. The air split. Nobody would ever agree who drew first. Some swore it was Virgil, others the old man. But what mattered was the crack of the gun, the scream of a man dropping, and the sudden explosion of chaos. Pistols barked, rifles boomed. Carters shot Carters, brothers gunning down cousins, drifters turning their weapons on whoever stood closest. The cottonwoods shook with the roar. Virgil dug behind a stump, firing. 3 men fell before he even reloaded. Old man Carter, crippled though he was, stood his ground, bellowing like a bullet, firing into the crowd with steady aim. Every shot found flesh. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. From a ridge, Mary Ellen watched the smoke rise, the sound of gunfire rattling her bones. Chayton stood beside her, rifle in hand. They'll wipe each other out, he said. Mary Ellen's heart pounded. And if they don't, if one side wins, that means a Carter still walks, and so long as they do, they'll come for Rose. Her fingers tightened on her revolver. Maybe it's time we finish what they started. Chayton's eyes flicked to her. That's blood you'll never wash off. Mary Ellen swallowed hard, staring at the madness below. It's blood that's already on my hands. By midday, the ground was soaked red. Dozens lay dead. The cottonwoods were scarred with bullet holes, leaves drifting down like green snow. Virgil, face streaked with grime and blood, stood tall over the bodies of men who once called him kin. His followers cheered raggedly, but old man Carter still lived. Leaning on his cane, bleeding from a shoulder wound, he spat at Virgil's feet. You think you won, boy? You think Taki and half a pack makes you a wolf? You ain't nothing but a jackal. And jackals don't lead, they feed. Virgil's jaw clenched. Slowly, he raised his pistol, pointing at the old man's chest. Mary Ellen's breath caught. If Virgil pulled that trigger, there'd be no turning back. The Carters would be split forever, father and son divided by blood and bullets. Without thinking, Mary Ellen stepped out from the ridge, gun in hand, voice ringing like thunder. Enough! The fighting stuttered. Faces turned, bloodied, sweat-soaked, wide-eyed. There she stood, the cast-off bride, the mother with fire in her eyes, the woman who defied them all. Virgil's pistol wavered. Old man Carter snarled like he'd seen a ghost. "You," he spat, "the whore that damned my son." Mary Ellen leveled her revolver. "And I'll damn you, too, if you so much as look at my child again." The silence was razor-sharp. For a moment, it seemed the world itself held its breath. The barrel of Virgil's gun trembled. Old man Carter's cane dug into the dirt. Around them, the Carters, bloodied, half-broken, waited to see who would fire first. The father, the son, or the woman who defied them both. And in the shadows, Cheyenne raised his rifle, ready to end the feud with one well-placed shot. The Carter Civil War wasn't finished. It had only just found its sharpest edge. Ashes and vows. Mary Ellen's last stand. The cottonwoods stood silent after the storm, their branches sagging heavy with smoke and grief. The battlefield was littered with Carterkin, the air thick with gunpowder and buzzing flies. Mary Ellen stood between father and son, her revolver trained, her heart hammering so loud she swore it could be heard across the valley. Virgil's pistol aimed square at old man Carter's chest. The old man's good eye burned with hatred, lips curled in a snarl. "Do it," he rasped. "Prove you got steel, boy. Put me in the ground." Virgil's hand shook, his knuckles white. For all his bluster, the idea of killing his father tore at him. Mary Ellen saw it, the flicker of doubt. She pressed her voice into the silence. "You think killing him makes you free? It don't. It makes you just like him. And you've been clawing your whole life to be more than that." Virgil's jaw clenched. The gun trembled lower. Then old man Carter barked a laugh. "Weak. You'll never be half the man I am." The crack of the rifle cut the air. The old man's laugh died in his throat. He staggered, blood blooming across his chest, and fell to the dirt. All eyes turned to the ridge, where Cheyenne stood, rifle still smoking. "It ends now," the Cheyenne warrior said flatly. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the Carters, the ragged, bloodied handful still alive, looked to Virgil. Some waited for orders, some waited for mercy. But Virgil only stared at his father's body, lips trembling, eyes lost. The pistol slipped from his hand into the dirt. Mary Ellen lowered her revolver, voice firm but not cruel. "Go home. What's left of you, go find something worth living for besides blood." The men hesitated, then slowly, one by one, drifted away into the smoke, leaving the valley scattered with corpses and broken promises. When the dust settled, only Virgil remained. He knelt beside the body of old man Carter, shoulders shaking. "He hated me," Virgil whispered. "Hated me, till his last breath. And still, I can't. Mary Ellen's throat tightened. She holstered her gun, stepping closer. "Maybe he never gave you love," she said softly. "But that don't mean you're chained to his hate. You can choose something different." Virgil looked up at her, eyes raw. "And what did you choose, Mary Ellen?" She glanced at Rose, sleeping in a sling across her chest. Then at Cheyenne, steady at her side. "I chose not to let them break me." Virgil swallowed hard, then rose to his feet, without another word. He turned his back on the Carter name and walked into the cottonwoods alone. The valley burned that night. The bodies were gathered. Fires lit under cottonwoods, flames clawing into the sky. The Carters, once the terror of the plains, were ash and smoke. Mary Ellen watched the fire, with Rose in her arms. For the first time in years, she felt the weight lifting from her shoulders. "They won't haunt her, Cheyenne," she whispered. "They won't haunt our girl." Cheyenne laid a hand on her shoulder. "Their shadow dies here." But Mary Ellen knew shadows linger, even after fire. When dawn came, she knelt by the riverbank, washing soot and blood from her hands. Rose cooed softly, unaware of the storm that had raged around her. Mary Ellen looked at her daughter, eyes shining. "You're going to grow up knowing you're worth more than men's pride or rage. You'll know love, not shame, and I'll tear down the world itself before I let anyone hurt you again." The river carried her words downstream, a vow carved deeper than blood. Cheyenne joined her, silent, then spoke. Mary Ellen Carter died when they left you to bleed. What stands here now is something stronger, something they couldn't kill. Mary Ellen met his gaze. Not Carter, not anymore. She shifted rows in her arms, chin lifting with quiet defiance. Mary Ellen strong. They left the valley behind, smoke still curling on the horizon. The world stretched wide before them, wild, dangerous, but free. Mary Ellen didn't know what trials lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She wasn't the broken girl the Carters abandoned. She was a woman who survived, the mother who endured, the wife who had found love where she least expected it. And as the sun rose high over plains, painting the sky in fire and gold, Mary Ellen Strong rode forward, her daughter in her arms and a warrior at her side. End of story. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the notification button. Thank you for watching.